How you doing?
Good.
You gotta say it louder than that.
There's like a Moral Heights people that have like a Rams club. You guys know about that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know about that? We have. I belong to the. We have one over 500 members in our club.
Really? So how did you join the club? Down here?
What? Thank you. Pleasure to see you. It's our pleasure.
Sure. Go Bruins.
You got it. All right.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming to our 100-year-old high school here in Lincoln Heights. We are celebrating a centennial here at Lincoln High. And for those of us that grew up in this community and went to this high school, we could not have more of a prouder day than we have today, honoring Kenny Washington. I'm Stephen Sariñana-Lampson. I'm the president of the Kenny Washington Stadium Foundation. And I say that proudly because the journey that we've taken over the last 2.5 years has been one that has just been one of amazement. It's been one of meeting the most incredible people along the way. It's been a journey that is really, I can say on behalf of the board, heartfelt, very, very heartfelt, in seeing that one of the greatest running backs to ever come out of UCLA, one of the greatest running backs to ever run in the NFL, albeit for his short career, gets honored appropriately with the Professional Football Hall of Fame. And at the same time, changing the conditions that our student athletes here at Lincoln High School have an opportunity to participate in. A little background real quick. In March of 2012, we did a study. Before we started the foundation, we said, look, things have not changed here. What is going on? We did a study that showed that we literally, of all the 70+ high schools in LA Unified, we had the worst athletic conditions and field of any school in the district, the worst. And there was no call for that. That's where the foundation began. That's when we took up the mantle of making sure that we could create change. And that's where we decided that we were going to follow the spirit of the greatest Lincoln Tiger of all, and that was Kenny Washington. I begin by giving you an idea about Kenny. If you took the courage of a tiger and the intelligence of a Bruin and the power of a ram, you'd have a Kenny Washington. If you took the running ability of a Jim Brown, the arm strength of a Dan Marino, and the raw courage of a Marcus Allen, you'd have a Kenny Washington. If you wanted to build a football player from scratch, you could make him tall and long, humble yet confident, intuitive and intelligent, bigger, stronger, faster, and of course, you give him an attitude from Lincoln Heights. You know, Kenny at one time was one of our most popular athletes in Los Angeles. Kenny was a guy that history forgot. Not anymore. Not anymore. I can tell you that when we began this a few years ago, you would do a Google search on Kenny Washington, you see a few articles. That's changed. A week ago, Kenny was written about in the Washington Post. So we're doing something right. And we are not going to stop until the day that we take that charter plane trip to Canton, Ohio. So today, this is swim number 13. I'd like to call up to do our invocation, former Lincoln High School Junior Varsity football coach, Mr. Chris Rustay. Chris.
this great day. Thank you for the life and legacy of Kenny Washington. Thank you for the ways that we can see you in his life. God, you love family, you love unity, and thank you for using the legacy of Kenny Washington to continue to build family and unity right here in our precious community. We give you this day. Be the center of our time. We love you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
And now, the student body president from 1974 gets to introduce the student body president from 2014, Ms. Myra Navarrete.
Good morning. My name is Sariñana-Lampson, the student body president of Lincoln High School. On behalf of Lincoln, I would like to welcome our distinguished guests to this very important event to our school and our community. Lincoln once said, "The struggle of today is not altogether for today. It is for a vast future also." Kenny Washington knew that struggle and opened up the future to us. He opened doors and gave hope to all African Americans, and not only just African Americans, but to those people who said to themselves, "I can't achieve." Although he faced many obstacles growing up in a Latino community during difficult times, he was able to pursue his dream and became a great football player. He did achieve. He started here at Lincoln, took it to UCLA, eventually playing for the National Football League. I am inspired by his achievements and move forward through my own struggles, knowing that I can succeed like him. If Kenny Washington could do it, we all can too.
We have a plethora of special guests today. And we will start with Kenny's daughter. Where is Karen? Miss Karen Cohen, please stand. Skylar and Melanie. Skylar, Melanie. We have in the house one bad dude. Former Los Angeles Ram, two-time Pro Bowler, four-time NFL All-Pro selection, and a punt returner that would light up the field. He still holds the NFL record of 207 yards in one game against the Falcons. Mr. Leroy Urban, how are you? We have our friends from the Bring Back the Los Angeles Rams. Who are those guys? You guys stand. All of you. You guys are the best. That's all I can say. And we have a whole lot of Bruins in the house, so let me kind of go through this list. We have former Associate AD, one of the first to come across the river and come to our first Kenny Washington Memorial, named Mr. Bob Field. How are you, Bob? We have Associate AD, Rip Sherritt. Director of Communications, Mr. Josh Ruprecht. UCLA Office of Governmental Affairs, Marco Perez. And two gentlemen that I'm going to have come up. The Athletic Director of UCLA Bruins, Mr. Dan Guerrero. And the head coach of the Bruins, and a guy that has taken them to a whole other level, Mr. Jim Barnes.
Chancellor Gene Block, and everyone in the UCLA family to be here to celebrate this great day for Kenny Washington and his family. Of course, most of you know Kenny was obviously not only a fantastic athlete, but just a tremendous person in a general sense. And UCLA honored Kenny by having him be the first Bruin of all time to have his jersey retired, and certainly is a charter member of the UCLA Hall of Fame. This is so fitting and proper that we are able to be here today with all of you to celebrate and provide this great recognition on behalf of all Bruins. It's a great day. Thank you very much.
And all I can say, Coach, if you play my Cal Bears this year, go easy on me, okay? Not too good. I'd like to now introduce my team, the Board of Directors of the Kenny Washington Stadium Foundation, where none of this would happen. They put up with my shenanigans and my desire for us to do things right. And I think that's the one motto we have, is we do things right. So first of all, I'd like to introduce, if you please stand, the Vice President, Mr. Dan Ramirez. Ms. Margaret Garcia. Our varsity head football coach and board member, Mr. Woody Carrillo. Mr. Jimmy Granados. Mr. Ronald Chico. And I have two more board members tonight. A little bit. One of our board members has been gone for a year. He just got back. And one of the things that we do every year with the Kenny Washington Memorial Game is we were the first high school in California to have a throwback experience. For 3 years, we had a throwback jersey experience at the Kenny Washington Memorial Game. This year, our arch rival, the Wilson Mules, also donned throwback jerseys. It was the first game in California history where two high schools played in throwback jerseys. A great event. It was So this year, one of our board members was away. I am very proud to say that Chief Warrant Officer David Duran, one of my former students, was serving our country in Afghanistan as a helicopter pilot flying medevac. David, I've got your throwback right here. Example of why our military is the best. The final board member I have known forever and a day, and we are all here because of his dream. We are all here because of his vision. I got this phone call from this guy 7.5 years ago. He was half out of breath. I've got this idea. We can do this. I said, what are we talking? We can do Kenny Washington Square. Okay. Knowing the political climate at the time, I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, what do we need to do? So all of this, you know, it all goes back to like one person that had an idea, one person that had a dream to honor the greatest Lincoln Tiger ever, probably the greatest East Lake Bruin football player ever, and the guy that was a pioneer in the National Football League. It goes back to, I'm proud to say, my friend, Ronald Chico. I also want to do a few little lessons, I'll if I can, for some of the folks that helped us along the way. Ronnie's brother, Brian, where are you, Brian? Stand up, please. He's like unofficial Kenny Washington Stadium Foundation research guy. If he wants something on the internet, he finds it. Foundation. I also want to recognize the man who saved that trophy. The trophy was given to Kenny Washington in 1949 upon December 12, 1949, when he retired from the Los Angeles Rams. He had this idea of having a perpetual trophy available for football excellence at his alma mater at Lincoln High School. So he had Paul Helms from the Helms Foundation create a trophy. At halftime of that game, Paul Helms handed Kenny Washington the trophy. Kenny Washington then handed it over to Dr. Riley, who was the principal of Lincoln High School. When the trophy was presented for the first time, Kenny himself came down and presented to Jimmy Salino. Sometime in the late 70s, the trophy kind of lost its way. But one guy essentially found it and brought it back. And Coach Rodriguez, where are you? He's back. He also paid me to tell you he's the winningest coach of Lincoln High School. None of this happens without partnership. And I have to acknowledge the principal of Lincoln High School, who has given this, at times, overzealous group of alums the opportunity to do something different, the opportunity to make something happen here. And so I have a profound thank you for the principal of Lincoln High School, Mr. Jose Torres. And I know he's here, so I'm going to introduce him now. Working with City Hall sometimes can be a challenge, don't we know? But we happen to have a representative from Councilman Cedillo's office that has been nothing but spectacular. You know, you award athletes on the field with playing time. This guy would have playing time. He never come off the field. So Jose Rodriguez, where are you? I'm looking for his boss. But we will acknowledge Jose because he has really done wonders for us in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Mr. Ray Covarrubias from Davis Blueprint, whatever we need. You know, he knows that when the phone call is for me, it's like a favor. And there's a lot of favors I got to pay out, so that's happening. From the Why Not Foundation, we have Yejin Shin. Where are you? The Why Not Foundation is a wonderful organization here in Lincoln Heights. It's very beneficial for all of us in terms of the service they provide, and they're big supporters of the foundation. I'm going to go ahead and just a little background about the Kenny Washington State Foundation. When we began, again, we had these conditions here that we just thought were, you know, unacceptable. Bottom line, unacceptable. So we started. The first thing we did, we took over some tennis courts that were put here in 1913 by a group of junior high school students. When Lincoln High School was built in 1913, the kids from the intermediate school said we want tennis courts. And the school board said we don't have the money. We just built this gigantic school, we don't have money. In 1913, junior high school kids in this community raised $900 to put those two tennis courts up there. They sat for about 22 years, the best we can tell. One of our first projects as a foundation was to have a cleanup. 150 people showed up. Varsity athletes, community people, alums, teachers. Today, those courts are used. They're used almost every day. And we're going to bring them back. We have plans to make them multi-purpose. We have plans to make one of them a tennis court again. But we're going to bring them back. That was one of the first things we did. But now, we're focused in on a couple things. You know, we're going to work on a scoreboard for here at Lincoln High School. And not just any scoreboard. You know, we want to have a video-capable scoreboard. And we're also working on a full life-size statue of Kenny Washington to put at our field. So those are the things we have right now. So, that being said, without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker. It would be really easy for me to tell you about the bills he passed when he was in Sacramento. It would be really easy for me to tell you about the years of service, you know, in the Assembly and the State Senate. It would be easy to tell you, you know, all the little nuances about what Gil Cedillo has done in his political career. But let me tell you what Gil Cedillo has done for us. When we had our first Kenny Washington Memorial Game I went to one of his meet and greets, and I literally went up to him and said, "Hi, we're having a football game to honor Kenny Washington." And he took that little postcard that we had for advertising, and he had it in his hand, he looked at me and said, "I'm there. I'm there." And every event, everything we have ever done, anything that we had done, Gilbert Cedillo has been there. So for me to introduce him as the keynote speaker right now, it gives me tremendous pleasure to call him our councilman, and it gives me more pleasure to call him my friend. Yep.
I want to thank everybody who's here today. I have a cold. Week 2 of pretty tough cold, so I apologize for the voice, and I lose my thought. You'll understand. So, Steve, thank you so much. Thank you so much, because history matters. You know, I'm a Bruin, so it wasn't hard. You know, he comes up, he gives me this card, really nice graphics, and he says, "You know, we want to honor Kenny Washington." Of course, he's going to say, "No, if you're a Bruin, right, Coach? You're a Bruin, you know, it's easy, right? No problem." You know, such a great and rich tradition in Coach Rodriguez. Then there's football. You may not be obvious today, but I was once a varsity quarterback, Papa won a quarterback, King Conference Championship, Eastern League, not Northern League. So, you know, they say, "Well, we've got this Kenny Washington Warrior." I'm like, "Well, hey, you know, I understand that." And I understand it for a very important reason. History matters, and leadership matters. And Kenny Washington is part of our history, and he was a great leader. And his leadership came from his humility, it came from his persistence, it came from his sense of pride, it came from his hard work. And he exhibited that in every aspect of his life. And so that's so important. As I said, he's a football player, he's a coach. You think about that, because that's what leadership is. And that's what coaches do. As coaches instill leadership, and you know, there'll be 1 or 2 persons who makes it to college, maybe one that got to play with Lynn Kane and makes it into the NFL. You know, there'll be, you know, one of those great experiences. But for the rest of the community, what it means is civic leadership. It means the young boys, the young girls who are involved in athletics have a role model and have an example, not just for sports, but how they live life. And that's what Kenny Washington is about. And that's why it's so important that we honor his history. That's what this community is about. People come to this community, one of the oldest in the city, with their hopes and aspirations to make a better life for themselves and the community. You need the skill sets to do that. And where do you get that? In this athletic department. And in all the athletic departments of the schools. That's where you get that. So when we're honoring Kenny Washington, we're honoring all the coaches and all the players. And why? Because we believe in that type of leadership. Hard work, determination, humility. Right? Kenny Washington was a great football player. He was a greater human being. When you break a color barrier, when you're the first, and I've had some great experiences in the legislature. 16 years working on the driver's license, 8 years on the DREAM Act. So when you're the first, you're out there on your own. And so you need those Kenny Washingtons to tell you, right? But you got to play the game to the end. Right, Coach? Isn't that the way we do it? All the way to the end. Never surrender. so that's why it's so important to honor Kenny Washington. When you do that in the Bruin way, with humility, and with hard work, with maximizing your God-given talents, right? You're not looking for the acclaim, you're not looking for the fame, you're just looking for the opportunity to serve and to lead. And so Stevie, that's what you've done. It's given us this opportunity. This city needs Kenny Washington Memorial. And I was thinking, this is my idea, I was thinking that we would also do this statue, life-size. I want a life-size statue. So people could see and get a sense of perspective, right? And so this city needs this today. This great city of diversity, of opportunity, where everybody comes together. This is the city that needs Kenny Washington, more than Kenny Washington needs the city. And so I'm so happy to be here today as we continue. We're going to build a stadium, we're going to build a statue, but also we're going to build young men and women in the memorial of Kenny Washington. Thank you, God bless. Go Bruins. There's a cold. So, this is what happens when you get the cold, right? That black comes in and then it goes here. Oh, yeah. So, Stevie, I want to bring you up here. And the city wants to acknowledge you and congratulate you for creating the Kenny Washington Square.
One of our political people showed up, one of our reps, so I'm going to call up. And it's kind of bittersweet because when Assemblyman Jimmy Gomez came into office, great. One, again, this change of leadership we've had for our community has been fantastic. And Assemblyman Jimmy Gomez has been one of those guys, a regular guy that just wants to make things happen. And he gave us a tremendous representative. And unfortunately, she kind of didn't be represented enough other area, so we're kind of losing her. So I want to bring up Sarah. Please come up. She's been fantastic for us, and I just want to say thank you so much. Come on, Sarah.
Thank you for that introduction. On behalf of Assemblymember Jimmy Gomez, who is in Sacramento attending to his legislative duties, he cannot be here. But again, I'm the former field representative for Lincoln Heights. I also want to acknowledge our district director, Frank Torres. So Frank makes everything run in the 51st Assembly District for the Assemblyman. And Stephen, thank you for your efforts. Assemblymember Gomez can be here, but he sent down some certificates. So one is for the Kenny Washington Square, and one is for you.
What did you touch? We have a series of speakers that are going to give a little anecdotal flavor to what we're doing today, and I'm going to call them one by one. You know, on the back of his 1949 Bowman bubblegum card, it said about Washington, considered by many as the greatest high school player in Southern California history. Our first speaker, Lincoln High School alum, Benny Padilla, was the recipient, one of the recipients of the Kenny Washington Award, right here. His name was on that trophy. That was like our Heisman at Lincoln High School. He's going to be reading a letter from NFL Hall of Fame referee, Mr. Jim Tunney. Okay?
Thank you. Just to let you know that I came here as a student from February 1948 until January of 1954. And I left for a while and did a few things and had kids and came back and started teaching and coaching in 1961. So I coached here from 1961 to 1970. And then I eventually went to LACC. But anyway, the time that I was here, Jim Tunney started teaching when I was in the 10th grade, so I got to meet him then. And then he coached basketball, and eventually he became the boys' vice principal, and I stayed in contact with him. He now lives up on 17 Mile Drive up in Pebble Beach. Nice little one. And I sent him information about today's event, and he says, Ben, I sure wish I could be there, but he is so busy. He started the Jim Tunney Youth Foundation, and he's really busy doing that. But he sent me an email, and this is what he had to say. Although I am unable to be among you today for this wonderful tribute to Kenny Washington, please know that I am here in spirit. I met Kenny when I was about 6 years old. My dad, Jim Tunney Sr., was his football coach here at Lincoln. Dad said Kenny was the best football player he ever coached in his 9 years. At Lincoln, however, it was more than Kenny's athletic ability that my dad admired. It was Kenny's strength of character that stood out. So much so that Dad helped further Kenny's education by helping him get into UCLA. I followed my dad and was fortunate to work here at Lincoln for 13 years as a teacher, coach, and vice principal. I remember so well this auditorium where you now sit to pay tribute to Kenny, and finally I had the district honor, along with others, to head up a tribute to Kenny at the Hollywood Palladium some 40 years ago. Among my various life's blessings, I cherish dearly the 75 years plus Kenny and his memory have been in my life. I hope you will carry out the high moral character that Kenny has set. My best to all of you, Jim Tunney Jr.
Our second speaker comes from the Lincoln High School Alumni Association. He is the historian, Mr. Ronald Granados.
Thank you, Stephen. As historian of the Lincoln High School Alumni Association, I am honored to speak to you about Kenny Washington on this very special occasion. And in light of the fact that February is Black History Month, today's event has an even greater significance. Most of us here today know a lot about Kenny Washington, so in a way I feel like I'm preaching to the choir regarding his exploits at Lincoln High. Kenny S. Washington, a native Angelino, was born August 31st, 1918. He was raised by his uncle Rocky Washington and his aunt Hazel in Lincoln Heights, a community where a black family among mostly working-class Italians was uncommon. His home on Avenue 19, near Our Lady of Help of Christians Church, is still there. It was said that a woman who lived next door would regularly drag 6-year-old Kenny to early morning mass. Raised in this environment, he became well acquainted with the Catholic faith and was said to have learned quite a bit of Italian from his friends and neighbors. With inherited athleticism from his father Edgar, young Kenny began his extraordinary athletic career on the sandlot next to the Catholic church down the street from his home. It was there that he displayed his love of baseball and football, while neighborhood kids looked on in admiration. He regularly participated in the church's Cub Scout sports leagues until his playing time temporarily came to a halt due to a bicycle accident that left both knees broken at the age of 10. In his earliest years at Lincoln, Kenny was tall and thin, who at times exhibited a sort of awkwardness. And during this stage of his development, he was considered too weak to play football until his junior year. Instead, he concentrated on baseball, where he developed into an outstanding player under the guidance of Coach Frank Millett. The following is an account in the 1935 yearbook. Romping through the Northern League with comparative ease, Coach Frank Millett's nine presented a team of unrivaled power, coordination, and polish. Lincoln defeated each team in the league twice to finish the season with 6 consecutive victories. The superlative pitching of John Palazza, the fine hitting of Kenny Washington, Lincoln's all-city shortstop, and second baseman Sam Yali, and the stellar playing of Charles Green at first were highlights of Lincoln's 1935 Northern League championship season. The Tigers were favored to win over Fremont High when the interlocking playoffs were suddenly abolished. Kenny won the city batting title that year and hit a home run in the championship game. When football coach James Tunney finally allowed him on the football field, he became unstoppable, an athletic force to be reckoned with during his final 2 years of high school. He would eventually grow to 6 foot 3 inches and became Lincoln's sports superstar, both on the diamond and on the gridiron. Kenny Washington became a true neighborhood hero. In the fall of 1935, as quarterback and all-league player, Kenny led the Tigers to their only undisputed city football championship. Lincoln High's varsity football team went undefeated in league play, winning all 6 games en route to the city championship. They upset favorite Fairfax 31-6, earning the right to play Fremont in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The Tigers beat the Pathfinders 13-9 in a hard-fought championship victory in which Kenny was responsible for all but 6 yards of offense for the Tigers, while also playing for the first team on defense. The following is an excerpt from the 1936 Lincoln yearbook about that city championship game against Fremont. It reads, "Humbling the powerful Fremont squad 13-9 in the hardest fought game of the season, the Tunneymen annexed their first championship in 23 years at the Coliseum on November 25th. Led by Kenneth Washington, brightest of Southern California's Pepton's galaxy of stars, the A's solved the stubborn Pathfinders line long enough in the third quarter to push across 2 touchdowns and the conversion. Washington ended a sensational prep career by submerging the strongest forward wall that Lincoln had contended with during the season to tally 13 points and lead his teammates to a thrilling victory that clinched the city crown almost single-handedly. To give you another example of his athletic prowess in football, as a junior in 1934, Kenny is credited with completing a 60-yard pass to his receiver. He also ran a 95-yard interception for a touchdown and had a 70-yard offensive run from scrimmage. He was a three-sport athlete during his playing days at Lincoln. He was a member of the baseball and football squads and the shot putter on the track team. His athletic achievements were extraordinary in all three. He was twice named the all-city teams in football and baseball. He graduated from Lincoln in 1936, then played football and baseball at UCLA, where he earned his BA in 1940. In the years after, he never forgot his high school alma mater. He was a lifelong member of the Alumni Association, and he never missed an opportunity to give back. This was especially evident after being honored on December 12, 1949 at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum on a day proclaimed Kenny Washington Day by Mayor Fletcher Bowron. On that day, Kenny was presented with a trophy from the Helms Athletic Foundation by its founder, Paul Helms. Upon receiving the trophy, Kenny immediately gave it to Lincoln High School principal, Dr. Thomas M. Riley, with the stipulation it become a perpetual trophy for the school's football program. That award is now known as the Kenny Washington Trophy. Since 1949, this award is given to the most outstanding varsity football player at Lincoln. Alongside his Uncle Rocky, Kenny was personally on hand to present the trophy for the first time to the late Tiger football great Jimmy Chalino. The trophy has remained a part of Lincoln's rich school history and tradition for more than 6 decades. Kenny Washington frequently returned to Lincoln once his playing days at UCLA and LA Rams were over, and in retirement from the Los Angeles Police Department. He was often seen at football games, sitting on the bench with the team as he watched and inspired them. He was there when Lincoln shocked Manual Arts 0-0 in 1962. Kenny's teammate Woody Strode once said in an unpublished interview with Sports Illustrated, "Integrating the NFL was the low point of my life. There was nothing nice about it. History doesn't know who we are. Kenny was one of the greatest backs in the history of the game, and kids today have no idea who he is." Well, Lincoln kids do know who he is. His presence will always be felt here at Lincoln, and in this community which continues to acknowledge his greatness and contributions as true hero and pioneer. His humility and humanity still resonates with everyone he's touched. He is and always will be an inspiration to us all. In the fall of 2011, newly organized Kenny Washington Stadium Foundation held its first Kenny Washington Memorial Game to honor and celebrate Lincoln High School's most cherished sports legend. Today, the Foundation's quest to keep his memory alive beyond the confines of Lincoln Heights will be realized. It has been a long time coming.
Thank you, Robert. There's a couple of chapters about Kenny Washington in Woody Strode's autobiography called Gold Dust. And Coach, you're going to love this story. He meets Woody Strode for the first time and says, "Hey, come on to my neighborhood, we'll have some lunch." So Woody Strode gets into a car with Kenny Washington and comes to Lincoln Heights. And they go from one house to the other, loading up on pasta and wine. So they get back to practice, and Coach Spalding says, what's wrong with Woody? Coach got a bad stomach. He was drunk for the first time in his life. Well, Kenny. Our next speaker is a writer for Sports Illustrated, a producer, and also the author of a book called Intercepted, The Rise and Fall of NFL quarterback Darrell Henry, Mr. Michael McKnight.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say out loud that it's great to see Kenny's face in his descendants' faces. This man's face on his grandchildren's faces is a cool thing to see. It's the highest honor I've ever received to be in front of you today. Kenny Washington was one of the greatest football players of his time, or any time, and it's important that we state that very clearly right off the bat. What a beautiful day this is. Today we're all going to remember, everybody here is going to remember it. Those don't come along very often. I've been asked to speak to you briefly today about Kenny's career at UCLA, and again, I'm humbled to do so. If Kenny Washington was one of the greatest football players ever to step on a football field, and he was, then UCLA was where Kenny played at the absolute peak of his powers. The knee surgeries hadn't come yet. The seasons he played in obscurity for the Hollywood Bears, they had not come yet. The post-war seasons he played for the Rams, those were still years away. At UCLA, Kenny was uninjured. He was about as free as a young black man could be in America at that time. He was a college kid with the incalculable energy of a boy becoming a man. He wreaked havoc on college football in a way that he did not expect. One of my favorite Kenny Washington facts, and there's a lot to choose from, is that the UCLA career rushing record that he set in 1939, it lasted until 1973. I want you to think about that for a minute. From before Pearl Harbor until the end of Vietnam, he held that record. He held it from the year he turned 21 years old until 2 years after he passed away. It was broken 2 years after I was born. Today, Kenny Washington still ranks 17th on UCLA's career rushing list, and I want you to let that sink in too. I could talk to you for 3 hours today, but I'm not. I'm going to keep it kind of brief. The highlights are many. UCLA's football program has produced dozens of All-Americans. Troy Aikman, Maurice Jones-Drew, Anthony Barr. Yes, absolutely. Kenny Washington was UCLA's first All-American football player. You have to forgive me, I'm a writer, I'm not a speaker. UCLA has retired the jerseys of 8 former football players, All-Americans, and All-Pros, like Kenny Easley, Jonathan Ogden. The first jersey ever to be removed from the shelves of UCLA's locker room, never to be worn again, was Kenny Washington's number 13. His number right here. And it is so good to see that, still holding strong over the decades. Into the era of its current coach, Coach Mora, good to see you. Everybody from UCLA, Mr. Guerrero, Coach Field, Joey. Oh boy. You reaffirmed my belief that UCLA is a special institution. It lifts up student athletes. Seeing you here confirms that for all of us. So Kenny Washington's jersey retired. Coach Moore's not going to let anybody wear it. In this era of 100 players on the roster, and sometimes you see 2 guys on the field at the same time wearing the same number, it's not going to be worn again at UCLA. If you ever get to see old films of Kenny playing at UCLA, and there's not much of it around anymore, you'll see a player who not only could compete in today's fast-paced pro game, but he could excel.
I was asked recently to compare him to someone, and the closest I could come up with was Cam Newton. If you remember how unstoppable Newton was as a runner and as a passer of the year, he won the national title and the Heisman at Auburn. Now imagine him getting up off the turf after he dove into the end zone for a touchdown and lining up in safety and playing safety at an all-American level. Think about that. Imagine Johnny Manziel, 4 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, eluding tacklers and throwing one of those touchdown darts that he's become famous for. Then imagine this taller, stronger version of Johnny Football turning around and playing safety like Ronnie Lott. In the words of the immortal Jim Murray, whatever Kenny hit got up slow. The street we're here to dedicate to Kenny Washington, a little swatch of pavement we're here to dedicate to Kenny Washington. I invite you to use your imaginations now and picture this same street 75 years ago. There was no Starbucks on Broadway. There were no Priuses rolling around. Other than that, not much has changed, really, not a lot. The Hollywood sign was 15 years old when Kenny was at UCLA, and it still said Hollywood Land. There was land on the end of it. The LA Coliseum is about 7 miles from here as the crow flies. It was also just 15 years old, and that building is where Kenny Washington built his legacy. You know, today we just assume that UCLA and USC were rivals since the Big Bang. You know, it wasn't always the case. UCLA football wasn't even in the picture. It was Notre Dame and USC and a handful of other pretenders, and that was pretty much it. But thanks to 2 games against USC that filled the highest rows of the Coliseum, use your imagination again and picture 103,000 people in the Coliseum in 1939. Kenny Washington did that. Everyone came to see Kenny Washington take on this unbeatable USC foe. After those 2 games, in which Kenny ran wild and he completed these impossible passes, including several to his teammate, Jackie Robinson, USC found itself with a new and very unexpected rivalry on its hands. You know, there's no film evidence of what I'm about to tell you, but the journalists of the day, and Kenny's teammate and his good friend Woody Strode, tell us that when Kenny stepped off the Coliseum field for the last time, following his final game against USC in 1939, every soul in the Coliseum stood up and gave him an ovation. He led the nation in total offense in 1939. Surely that made him an All-American, right? First team All-American? No. That wasn't an option for Kenny Washington. There was a magazine, though, that took a poll of players, college football players, and man, it'd be cool if we did this today. Ask them who their All-Americans were. Kenny was the first player to be chosen by his peers as a first-team All-American. That speaks to me better than any of my peers in the media could put together. The Heisman Trophy, also not available to Kenny Washington. 22 more years would pass before an African-American player won that award. In 1939, the Heisman went to a back from Iowa. Surely he was a good player, but his numbers were a fraction of Kenny's. Today, nearly a century after he was born, Kenny Washington remains Lincoln Knight's favorite son. He's a product of these boulevards. He's a UCLA man. He's a UCLA alumnus. Today is a grand day. Today that would not have come to pass without the thankless work of the Kenny Washington Stadium Foundation and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's our next street. That's our next street we're going to pave. I hope to see everyone here, there. And I hope we're given a day as beautiful as the one we've been given here today. Thank you so much.
The second one, I have a bone to pick with. So, Mr. Councilmember Gilbert.
Yes, sir.
Every time I cross Mr. LeBlanche's path, he says, my best game was against Lincoln. Every time. My best game was against Lincoln, right? So I decided, let me do a little research on this, okay? So I pulled out the Helms Athletic Foundation All League selections, okay? So right here, 1970, Second team, let's see, guard, Tom LaBonge, Marshall High School, 5'11", 200. But here's my question. You're a senior, and you made second team twice.
Well, I'll tell you why, but that's not Let's talk about Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School. My mother was born in Lincoln Heights. And the wonderful thing about life is you don't know where you are. Road 6. Where's the young man in row 6? Stand up. This man, right there, right there. The young man behind you. That's the future. Yes, stand up. That's something. And that's what it's all about. So I just wanted to come here, give you a little love. I did it my best game, but it was in 1969. It was a rainy weekend, and it was nothing like the mud of Lincoln High. And the cheerleaders and the drill team were as loud as anything in the Northern League. But I was lucky, Coach Mora, because I was a defensive tackle, and who was playing defensive end, believe it or not, that game? Mike Hayes, the future All-American Hall of Famer, was a defensive back. So I think that's where all the pressure went for Lincoln and gave me a free shot. I just want to thank you for what you do. And Gil Cedillo, get up here, Gil, right now. Gil, I want to put a little all these two league together right here. Look, he's got it right, Coach, just like that. He did it right. I got to be a counselor for a lot of great reasons. And one of them is I read signs. And the sign said about the history that went before us. And I met people. I had great parents, and I had great friends and family and coaches, and I read plaques. And someone's going to read that plaque and talk about the history of Kenny Washington and say, I could do that. And I like the, you had no tie on. Where was the last speaker? Very good. I'm sorry, I don't want to pronounce you. Michael. Yes, the next road is up Broadway, out Valley Boulevard, all the way to Interstate 75 to Canton. And let's get Kenny Washington in the Hall of Fame.
She's the greatest right here.
Tom, it's for you. It's red gray. He wants a football bat.
Red Gray wants a football bat.
Thank you. I haven't seen a football bat beaten up since ever. Our next speaker will talk about Kenny's time with the Los Angeles Rams. He's the leader of the Bring Back the Los Angeles Rams crew, Mr. Tom Bateman.
Thank you, Stephen. Knowing our history is one of the biggest motivators for our movement to bring the Rams back to Los Angeles. And Kenny Washington is at the forefront of that history. Kenny's career at Lincoln High School and UCLA as part of the legendary 1939 backfield, along with teammates Woody Strode and Jackie Robinson. You might have heard of him. Kenny was an All-American and played in the annual College All-Star game. And back then, the College All-Stars would play the NFL champion. He scored a touchdown versus the Green Bay Packers. But there would be no opportunity to go to the NFL for another 6 years. Kenny's road to becoming a Los Angeles Ram began thousands of miles away on the freezing shores of Lake Erie. On December 16, 1945, the Cleveland Rams fought through a freezing battle in Cleveland Municipal Stadium to win the 1945 NFL title. Despite this championship victory, the future of the team was in question. During their first 9 years, the Rams had struggled to draw crowds. And with the new All-American Football Conference that was already capturing the local imagination and ticket sales, with the hiring of Ohio State legend Paul Brown, the Cleveland Browns had already won the battle for the city, and they hadn't even played a game yet. This didn't faze Dan Reeves, the 33-year-old owner of the Rams. He had been looking west for years and had tried to move before, but had been rejected by unconvinced owners who refused to go anywhere further west than Chicago. Reeves kept pressing the issue, and with the All-American Football Conference planning to put a team in Los Angeles, The other owners finally gave in and Reeves was allowed to move the team. He had his eyes set on one site, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The Rams had struggled to draw any crowds in Cleveland, even sometimes playing in a high school stadium. Only 29,000 had shown up to see them win the NFL championship just a few weeks before. But Reeves was confident that the 103,000 seat capacity of the Coliseum was not an obstacle. With the NFL already approving the move, Reeves sent his general manager, Charles Chili Walsh, and his lawyer, Lloyd Wright, to answer any questions at the public hearing of the Coliseum Commission on January 15, 1946, just a month after they won the NFL championship. There were some people who had questions for the Rams. One in particular was a sports writer for the old Los Angeles Tribune. Hallie Harding was not shy about his opinions, and his sarcastic wit was a trademark of his column in the Tribune, which was called, "So What?" Harding spoke to and challenged the NFL director, pointing out a shameful truth. There were no Negro players in the National Football League. Oh, there had been African-American players in the NFL before. Men like Charles Hollis, Gideon Smith, Rube Marshall, even the great actor Paul Robeson, Duke Slater, Ray Kemp, to name a few. The NFL even had a black quarterback and head coach, Fritz Pollard, who would eventually be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But the NFL had not had a black player since 1933. And during this time, at least 9 collegiate All-Americans were African American, but not a single one was given an NFL tryout. Leaving his trademark sarcasm aside, Harding spoke eloquently to the Coliseum Commission. It is our way out here in the West to give everyone a chance to succeed and excel. We cannot allow a segregated NFL team to use a stadium paid for by our taxes. We cannot play segregated football here in Los Angeles. It's just not our way. I oppose any team that will not give our citizens an opportunity to try out, an opportunity to be included, and an opportunity to play. Well, the Rams, Representatives Chili Walsh and Lloyd Wright, were pretty flustered. They were scrambled. They pointed out that the NFL rulebook contained no official prohibition against black players. But Harding and the other sports writers were quick to point out that the ban was unofficial, but it was still very real. Discussion quickly turned to who the Rams would sign, and Kenny Washington's name was always at the top. One of the commission members asked Walsh and Wright if the Rams would dare ban Kenny Washington. Of course not, they said. And he replied, I just want you to know, if our Kenny Washington can't play, there will be no pro football in the LA Coliseum. With that, the Rams agreed and signed Kenny Washington to an NFL contract on March 26, 1946. A year before Branch Rickey brought up Kenny's UCLA backfield teammate to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Coming into the NFL at the age of 28 with 5 knee surgeries, and Coach Warren can tell you how hard that would be. 28 and 5 knee surgeries robbed Kenny of the career he could have had. But what he did in his career lives. Even today, and Mike, I think you'll appreciate this, even today, with all the great running backs that have worn the Rams uniform, men like Lawrence McCutcheon, Eric Dickerson, and Marshall Faulk, Kenny still holds the Ram team record with a 92-yard touchdown run that still stands today, 66 years later. I have no doubt that Kenny would be proud of the role he played in integrating the NFL. He was a proud man, a proud Angelino, a proud Tiger, a proud Bruin, and a proud Los Angeles Ram. Councilman Cedillo, when the Rams come back to Los Angeles, I think that statue you talked about needs to go right in front of wherever they build the stadium. Right alongside with his name in the team's ring of honor. Los Angeles has taken it on the chin many times over the years over the issue of race. We're not a perfect city, but I believe we can always be a better city. It is important to remember the times when we fail, but it is also important to remember the times when we shine, when we lead the way, as we did in early 1946, when we, in Kenny Washington, and the Los Angeles Rams changed the sports world forever. Thank you.
So if I was going to compare him to a safety, I might have gone with Kenny easily instead of the USC guy Ronnie Lott. But it's just me. It's a small detail. No. It's out. I'm with it. And Tom, you did a great job of talking about the history with the Los Angeles Rams. And one thing that should be noted, and I know a lot of people are coming up here, I don't think there's a lot I can tell you about Kenny Washington that you don't already know. But the Los Angeles Rams were the first team in NFL history in 1951 to have their road games televised. They were the most popular team of all sports in Los Angeles, more than any other. You think of the Lakers as their height here. That's what the Rams were in the 50s. And a big part of the reason was of Kenny Washington. So when you think about the greatest game that was ever played in 1958 because it was televised, and all these huge TV contracts that the NFL are signing right now, a lot of it has to do with the legacy of Kenny Washington. Take pride in that. And I have a speech, and I'm putting it in my pocket, because I was sitting here, and I'm not going to say this as an NFL employee, so nobody's quoting me, please. This is Adam Rank, the sports enthusiast. I'm going to make a promise to you. This is the God's honest truth. I'm going to do whatever I can to get your grandfather in the Hall of Fame. It's almost embarrassing that the greatest sports league in the world does not recognize its history because it's still, as you said, history is important, and it is now my mission. That's all I can say, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Adam. To talk a little bit about growing up around Big Kenny, a friend of the family, Mr. Willard.
Thank you very much. I would first like to express my appreciation to Stephen and the foundation for all they're doing for Kenny and to keeping me involved in this whole process. Before I make my comments, I just wanted to comment on something that Stephen said early on that really kind of stuck with me, and that is he mentioned that history has forgotten Kenny Washington. And as I sat there, I said, Lincoln Heights and Lincoln, they haven't forgotten Kenny Washington. So my story is very personal, and it's about confidence and inspiration. My relationship with the family goes back to 1953. Kenny Washington Jr. was my best friend, one of my best friends. And we first met in junior high school at what was Mount Vernon Junior High School in 1953. So from that point on, we have been very close with Kenny and with his family. And I want to go from 1953 to 1958. In 1958, I was very blessed to be a member of the baseball team at Dorsey High School. Kenny was one of our stars, and I was a junior. We were both juniors that year. And we were playing, we had a chance to play for the city championship. Now, for those of you that don't know, at that particular time, every school in the district played in the tournament. They called the tournament the Dorsey Tournament. I think there were like 32 teams, and I likened it to March Madness, where the first team that could win 5 in a row, March Madness was 6 in a row, you win the championship. The first team that win 5 in a row would win the city championship. Also, The championship was played on a Saturday. Quite a bit different than it is now, because in those days, you played 2 games. You played one in the morning, which was a semifinal game. You played the championship game in the afternoon. So you had to win that first one to get their championship game. Our coach decided that we were going to go, he was going to go with our ace. Our ace was Marcel Latchman. Many of you would have followed baseball, you know Marcel from having been a manager with the California Angels. But we won that game 2-1 against North Hollywood High School. In between the first game and the second game, they provided us with bag lunches. Now, I need to tell you that I was a substitute on that team and had played very sparingly throughout the year. As a matter of fact, sparingly would probably be an exaggeration. So, in my mind, there was no way possible that I should expect to play in that championship game. So, instead of having 1 bag lunch, somebody else did one their lunch, I had 2 bag lunches. So as we prepared for that second game, I was sitting there with a full stomach with 2 bag lunches. Lo and behold, we started that game down 2-0 after 3 innings. I'm not sure what happened to our right fielder, George Yamazaki, but for some reason, George did not come out for the 3rd inning. There were 5 of us on the bench, and I kind of had to research this in my mind, because there were 5 of us on the bench. And as I thought about it, 4 of them were seniors. I'm the only junior sitting there on the bench, again with 2 lunches in my stomach. The coach decided he was going to have me come in there with the bases loaded. I believe there was 1 out when I came in. We were down 2-0. We were in the midst of a big rally at that time. You know, I'm coming in there, not expecting to play. I came up to bat with the bases loaded. And over my left shoulder, I heard somebody say to me, "Willard, you can hit this guy." I knew the voice. It was Mr. Washington. I looked over there, just made eye contact with him, and I don't know what it was, like an angel on my shoulder. I need to tell you that as we grew up, Mr. Washington was bigger than life. I liken him to somehow, we look at John Wayne. That kind of a bigger-than-life person. That's the way Mr. Washington was. So as the pitcher proceeded to try to work me out of that lineup, the count went to 3-2. Bases loaded, 1 out. And the next pitch was high. And I walked, run came in as a result, and we went on to score 10 runs that inning. The next inning, we scored 5 runs. I would have been the 4th. Up comes the 5th inning. In the 5th inning, come up to bat, 2 men on base. I hit a line shot between left field and center field. Now, the tournament was played at a park, so there were like 4 diamonds at that particular park. And the ball went between left field and center field. As a matter of fact, I think it's still rolling, because it never stopped. So around the bases I go. I slid in just to make it look good, as the story goes, for a 3-run home run. We went on to win that game 18-5, which was the last time Dorsey High School won the city championship in baseball. And I shared the story with you because of the impact that man had on my life. And as I look to what I was able to do from that point on, that's the kind of inspiration, that's the kind of confidence that Mr. Washington called me. It was Big Kenny, it was Mr. Washington, Little Kenny was his son. So that's my story, and that's the kind of impact that I feel he had, that I know he had on me, as well as all of us that were coming up at that time. And lastly, I cannot tell you how impressed I was the first time we came out here when I saw the gentleman that were in the stands who had won the Kenny Washington Trophy. I mean, it was like they were walking on air. They were so proud that they were the winner of that particular award. And it just said to me, that's the kind of impact he's had on those young people. That's the kind of impact he's had on our community. That's the kind of impact he's had on me. Thank you.
With Kenny's oldest grandson, a friend, and someone I hop on the phone with quite a bit. He avocados. Mr. Kirk Washington.
Thank you very much. It is a tremendous honor for us to be here. It's for the Washington family. First of all, I want to thank Steve and the Kenny Washington State Foundation for all the hard work that they do. It's just, I can't tell you from the bottom of my heart, when Steve contacted my brother Craig a couple, 2.5, 3 years ago, Craig calls me and says, hey Kirk, this guy Steve called and says he wants to meet with us. Steve, what do you want to meet about? Something about granddads. Okay, well let's go meet with him. And through the years, we've had people, approach us about certain things and about our grandfather and say, they want to do this and they want to do these other things. When we sat with Steve for the first time, we knew that we had something special from them and the foundation because of how they held our grandfather in such high esteem that it was hard not to believe him. And then when the inaugural Kenny Washington game came around and he told us what he was going to do, it touched our hearts and our souls as far as what he was able to accomplish in such a short period of time with this group of hard workers to keep his memory alive. I can't say enough about it, but it's been a tremendous honor. The other aspect, I know everybody has spoken so eloquently about our grandfather in terms of what he was on the field, what he was able to accomplish. I've heard so many stories from childhood until today. It's been all these things. Some things are even new to me. And my grandfather passed away when I was about 6.5 years old, so I didn't know him all that well. But my father definitely kept the memory alive. In our home, we used to have his All-American helmets and his Ram helmets with the leather and no face mask. And every once in a while, we used to kind of run around, my brother and I, with the helmets on the house. It's kind of funny. But nevertheless, it was, I didn't realize the impact that my grandfather had until I was much older. When I was in college, I played baseball at Cal Poly Pomona. I played for the legendary John Salinas. And Coach Salinas went to Manual Arts High School. He's the same age as my grandfather. And he used to tell me, he said, Kirk, well, he actually didn't call me Kirk, he called me Kenny. And for 4 years, I don't even think the man really knew my name. I think he used to, as a matter of fact, one of the coaches say, Coach, it's Kirk. And then he used to spell my name K-U-R-T, which my name is spelled K-I-R-K. So he just continued to call me Kenny. But nevertheless, he used to talk about stories about my grandfather when he played against him when he was at Manual Arts. And he used to talk about how knock-kneed he was, and his knees were all over the place, and basically he hit him in the head with his knees and knocked him out, and all these other great stories. And throughout the years, I would hear all these wonderful stories. And as I'm now old enough to really appreciate what this all means, it's kind of mind-blowing to me of how, to this day, in 2014, that his legacy is still alive and well and doing what is being done, especially with the work ethic and of the Kenny Washington State Foundation. It's just tremendous. I will say this. I know I'm surrounded by a bunch of Bruins here, but my father was a Trojan. And the reason my dad was a Trojan was, he used to tell us all the time, he said, my grandfather had such a name in Los Angeles that my dad was also a junior, that it was very difficult for him to be, to grow up in that shadow. So he made it a point, and he always used to tell us I wanted to do everything opposite of what my dad did. So, of course, what better way to do it is go be a Trojan, right? So yeah, that's what he became. And he didn't want to wear the same number, and he played baseball. So it was us, my father, thanks to my father, he basically brainwashed us since birth to become Trojans, so no disrespect to the Bruins out here. I know, and deep down in my soul, I guess I kind of read out of the movie, so it's kind of weird. Nevertheless, I want to everybody for attending today. Especially want to thank all the hard work that the foundation has done for our family, for Kenny Washington, and to keep that memory alive. It's truly an honor and a blessing to be here, and so many people have spoken so highly about my grandfather. It's just overwhelming. So thank you very much, and it's a tremendous honor to be here. Thank you.
Vice President of the Kenny Washington Foundation. I'd like to take this time to thank Steve for his vision, his direction on what he has accomplished. 3 years ago, when we started this foundation, we were a group of individuals as if we were on a ship without a rudder and a captain. Steve came on board, and he's the one that gave us that direction, that vision to accomplish what we have accomplished up to today. But today is only the first step. We have much more to do. With Steve's leadership and with your help, we hope to accomplish all of this. Thank you.
Okay, Ronnie, I need you. Yeah. Well, I don't need you, but... We were not sure about the weather, but then I kept thinking about the football gods would not allow it to rain on Kenny Washington Square Day. So we decided to do, kind of hedge our bets, and Ronnie, if you please. That is an authentic 1935 Lincoln High School jersey that Kenny wore. We have retired the number. No Lincoln Tiger will ever wear that number again. And our next try is going to be with the the St. Louis Rams until they move to LA to get them to retire that number also. So, without further ado, for those of us that can join us, we are going to walk to Kenny Washington Square, right out the street here. Thank you so much for being here.
Let me hold it first. Let me hold police first. You know what? Rick! Now, I'm okay. On the greatness of Gil Cedillo, who's done such a wonderful job. Get in there with Gil. Get in there with Gil right now. As your councilman. Oh, okay. Ready? Got everybody? Yeah. Lincoln High alumni. Good job, Gil. You ready?
All right, one. Count it down, council member.
Pull it from the bottom. Pull it from the bottom. Pull it from the bottom.
Go on two.
One.
On two. Set. 1, 2.
Hut, hut, hut. Omaha.
Omaha.
Go down, go down.
Come on up. That'll end up in Omaha. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody look this way for photos.
Yes. Why am I standing? I got you. Doesn't matter, man. This is for everybody.
It's a camera. Oh, but I can just get that. He's going to take pictures of it.
Yeah. Well, if we were lucky to get one
Yeah,
Oh,